Awesome, welcome back. This is the first of the Emergency Procedures Learning module. In this session, we'll be covering emergency communication, planning, and reporting. Prior to flight, all participants in the operation need to be informed. This can be accomplished through crew member briefings. Also, make sure that all control links between the control station and the UA are working properly. Additionally, make sure that there is sufficient power for all devices that require it for the intended operation. There is a 24-point pre-flight scalable checklist provided to you by Advisory Circular 107-2. We will cover this in a later section. Prior to flight, it is important to assess the operating environment. This includes the local weather conditions. Be aware of the local airspace and any flight restrictions. This includes understanding if there are any hospitals with helicopter services or any other emergency services that use helicopters. Be aware of the location of persons and property anywhere near your operation. Also, it's important to identify any possible obstructions to your UA operation and flight path. In a later section, we're going to cover a 24-point scalable pre-flight checklist. These are just a few items that are covered, but let's dive in. Make sure that any object that is attached or carried is secure and it does not adversely affect the flight characteristics or controllability of the aircraft. Before you head out to the operation site, make sure that you have all the necessary documentation in the event there's a need for an inspection from some type of authority. We're going to learn a little bit later that documentation of everything that you do is super important, particularly if there's an accident. So always make sure that you document that you did a safety risk assessment. The FAA encourages the remote pilot in command to conduct overall safety risk assessment as a method of compliance. This is a simple risk assessment chart, which we will go into greater detail in a later section. It's fairly straightforward when looking at severity and the likelihood of that severity. With this, we can identify whether the operation is too risky. We will see this risk assessment flow chart in another section, but let's dive into it anyhow. The first step is identification of any hazard. We do this by taking a look at the operational environment and crew member briefings. Once we've identified any hazards, then we take a look at the likelihood and severity of those risks. Based on the likelihood and severity of the risk, we develop mitigations to resolve those risks. Then we verify that mitigations do not create new hazards. Then rinse and repeat. This information has been touched on already in a previous section, but it's worth repeating. In an in-flight emergency requiring immediate action, the remote pilot in command may deviate from any rule of Part 107 to the extent necessary to meet that emergency. A remote pilot who deviates from Part 107 must, upon request of the FAA, file a written report of that deviation to the FAA within 10 days.